Today's daf is Chaf Beis, and we're going to start with the Mishnah about 4 lines down from the top. And this Mishnah deals with the edus of either krovim, 2 relatives, like 2 brothers, or avodim, which means an eved knani that has not yet been mishuchrar, and they want to testify about the levana b'chidusha. Av ubno sharo es hachodesh, according to the opinion of the Tanakama of this Mishnah, Yelchu. They can and should be encouraged to go to the Beis Din to testify, but lo shemitztar from zemzeh, not because we can form a kat, a unit of Edim, by integrating a father and a son, or 2 brothers, any 2 relatives. No. Why are we encouraging them to go to Beis Din? Ella shemi posel echad mehem yitztarif hasheni im acher. Which means that we never know exactly for sure whether we'll have 2 Edim Ksherim. So just as a backup plan, we would ask one of these 2 relatives to come to the Beis Din. We'll encourage him to come. So in an event that we need him, he's available. And if one becomes possible, we don't know which one, then we'll find someone else who's not a relative. We'll join him together with this one of these 2 people, the one who's kosher, and we'll have ourselves a kat. We'll be able to mekadesh the chodesh. Rabbi Shimon Omer avu bno v'chol hakrovim ksherim li edus hachodesh. Rabbi Shimon says that edus hachodesh is not like another classic edus which requires 2 edim ksherim. It's a different kind of edus, a different kind of halacha. It's only necessary in order to facilitate Beis Din's ability to be mekadesh the chodesh. So whereas the Tanakama would invalidate 2 relatives for edus hachodesh, Rabbi Shimon would validate them. Now keep in mind that both the Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon agree that we need 2 edim. Less than 2 edim won't do. And in that sense, from that perspective, edus l'kidush hachodesh is classic edus. The Torah says, "Al pishnayim edim yakum davar." Or Rabbi Yossi. Now Rabbi Yossi is going to tell us an actual story, and I want to emphasize as we go through the Gemara soon that whenever the Mishnah tells you a story after presenting a machlokes, the general rule is that the purpose of the Mishnah, by telling us an actual testimony of what went happened and how they paskin, is indicating how we're going to paskin. So we're going to read this story, and we're going to try to figure out whether we paskin like Tanakama, namely that 2 krovim are disqualified for chodesh, or like Rabbi Shimon, that they qualify. Amar Rabbi Yossi, Maisa b'tovia harofe. The word harofe generally means a moel, not necessarily, but in any event, so Tovia, together with his son, saw the new moon, and there was a 3rd person who was with them, Avdo Mishuchra. Now, an Eved, after he gets Shichrur, becomes a Ger. And therefore, as far as Edus is concerned, he's kosher li'edus. Now, watch what happens. Initially, there were 2 stages here. Kiblu Kohanim, the Beis Din was made up of Kohanim, Oso v'es bino, Uposlu es avda. This is very interesting. On the one hand, the original psak, but we'll soon see that Beis Din rescinded this, was reflective of Rabbi Shimon, namely that we can accept krovim. But that itself, per se, would be fine. But what's paradoxical here is to disqualify an Eved, even though he received to get Shichrur. Why is that? So based on Rashi and others, and a Gemara later on, the original psak of Beis Din that's being reported here, the Maisa of Tovia by Rabbi Yossi, reflects a drasha in a pasuk in Parshas Bo. As you know, the mitzvah of HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, Rosh Chodashim, which the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh, appears in Parshas Bo. And the Gemara is going to darshan a little bit later on that Moshe and Aaron, you are qualified to testify, even though you are two brothers. And this supports Rabbi Shimon Shita, as we saw in our Mishnah, that Krovim Aksherim L'Kiddush HaChodesh. Then the Gemara goes ahead and says that Lachem, when the Torah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu addresses Moshe and Aaron, he says Lachem, it's got to be two Edom that are similar to you, and that means V'yuchasim Kamotzcha, that you have a miyuchas, a yichus from your parents and so forth and so on going back. But an Eved Meshuchrar is a ger, and he's not considered a miyuchas. Now, generally speaking, a ger has all the same identical dinim and status as the Yisrael Gomer, but there's one halacha before this one where a ger is excluded, and that's in the laws of kahuna. What do I mean by kahuna? A Kohen is not allowed to marry a Gioris. And that's where the Torah sets up a difference between a ger and a regular Jew who's miyuchas. And the Gemara is going to darshan in order to reflect on this first shita of the Bezdin of Kohanim, as reported here by Rabbi Yossi, that they darshan lachem, that Achodesh Lachem is telling Moshe and Aaron that any two krovim are ksherim as long as they're lachem. Lachem means they're similar to you and the miyuchasim, to exclude gerim or avodah b'shuchron. Now the Rimi Lunil has a different interpretation. He held that the Eved here of Tovia was actually a Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Ben Chorim. And even though the Tana used the word Meshukrar, he means that the other half that's owned by another Yisrael he's about to give him a get shipus. That's why he calls him Meshukrar. Now, at this point, we know that Ksherim, that Krovim are Ksherim and Avadim are Psulim. However, Shebo Lifnei Bezdin, at the end of the day, when they came in front of Bezdin, you see the Bezdin Shel Kohanim was like the first step on the way. And then they would go into the Bezdin. I would guess that the Bezdin Shel Kohanim would first siphon it out, if you know what I mean. Find out if we have what we need to be Mekadosh Chodesh. Then they sent it up to the regular Bezdin. And at that point, Kiblu Osom Es Abdul Pasus Beno. They came to the opposite conclusion. The final ruling of the Bezdin was in favor of the Tanakama against Rabbi Shimon to exclude Krovim, but they accepted the evidence, meaning they had a different interpretation of this pasuk Achodesh Lachem, and Lachem means anyone who is considered a full-fledged Jew, like an Eved Meshuchrar. But you, Moshe and Aaron, are on the level that you can preside over the best. You cannot testify about the Levana because you're Krov. And if we were to derive the final conclusion la halacha based on the Mishnah, we would certainly accept the sheet of the Chachamim against Reb Shimon, namely that we disqualify two Krovim, but we can accept the testimony of an Eved Meshuch. Rab Levi, the Gemara quotes Rab Levi, my time with Reb Shimon. What was the source for Reb Shimon? The Chsiv, it says in Kiddush HaChodesh, Vayom Hashem Moshe v'Aaron be'eretz Mitzrayim l'mor HaChodesh zel lachem, Eidazu tehei ksherim b'chem. As we said before, the Torah is addressing Moshe and Aaron, saying that you qualify as a, meaning Krovim are ksherim, and that's the source for Rabbi Shimon's opinion and Mishnah that Krovim are ksherim. Rabbanot, what do they do with this pasuk lachem, which seems to indicate that Moshe and Aaron can testify? No. It's not referring to testimony according to the Chacham. Eidazu tehei mesura lachem. You could be makabel li'evis hachodesh, and anyone lachem that's chashav lachem, anyone who has that same status of being a mum